Good morning, everybody, and welcome to nErDcampCT, our inaugural event. We are so excited that you are joining us from hopefully all over. We have a really exciting day planned, and we just wanted to go through some things in our opening to, again, welcome everybody and hopefully get some questions answered that might come in and just get you really excited for the day. So, you can go ahead and switch to the next slide. That's me. Oh my gosh. Sorry. So I just want to first really give a huge shout out to all the organizers that came together to make this day happen. It was a very, very amazing group of educators and authors that really have been thinking about nErDcamp Connecticut for at least probably 3 years, if not longer. We've been inspired by nErDcamp Long Island, nErDcamp New Jersey, nErDcamp New England, and probably others that we've all attended at different points. So we've brought back some ideas, and this group is also very fun, as you probably can see from our fun summer Bitmoji scene. All of us are in different stages of being finished with our school year. Some of us still have a little bit of time left, but this has been such a joyful planning event. Even if it's been a lot of work, we've really worked together well, and I think that we will be very happy with the result of our labor. This is what we look like in real life. So we have librarians from all levels. We have an author, Deborah Friedman. We have members from CASTLE, the Connecticut Association of School Librarians. We have a representative from Connecticut Reading Inc., the Connecticut Reading Association. And we also have somebody, Aya, from the Connecticut Council for Teachers of English. So we really wanted to make this a collaborative effort. And in future years, we are hoping that these organizations share responsibility for making sure nErDcamp continues in Connecticut. And just to kind of to frame our thinking and our day, we just want to recognize that there's been a lot going on in the world. A lot of us have been sheltered in place since March. And just really trying to figure out kind of that new normal. And then we have a lot of the topics and the issues coming up in the last couple of weeks with anti-racist ideas being at the forefront now of what we can do as individuals and as communities and as a country to really move beyond some of these things that we've been talking about for many, many years. So when we were planning this, and especially when I was thinking about this opening, I really came back to this quote by Maya Angelou, and it's just really always struck me, and it seems very, very relevant to this current situation, and to what I hope today will really be all about is do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. So I really hope this can be one of the things that frames our work together today. And to go along with that, for nErDcamp, if you've never attended a nErDcamp before, you are going to experience an amazing day, and you will be hooked probably forever. But we do want to just share a code of conduct so that everybody is on the same page. And the first 3 bullets are something that we are very, very committed to. We've tried to do a lot of things in the background to make sure that this will be the situation for everybody. So we are asking that everyone is considerate, respectful, and collaborative. Please know that we will not tolerate anything that would be demeaning or discriminatory or harassing behavior and speech within the chats or on the streams. And just be mindful of your fellow participants. Please alert conference organizers if you notice a dangerous situation or someone in distress. And you can send an email to nErDcampCT@gmail.com if that is something that you are witnessing. And we just want to make sure that it's a very positive environment where everybody's voice is welcomed and heard and respected. And then in regards to nErDcamp, there's a couple suggestions for how to nErDcamp. One is we want everyone to participate in an authentic way. And when we do that, we create a unique nErDcamp to this situation. So there are no 2 nErDcamps that will really be alike because there are different people and different mixtures of people at each event. Please actively encourage other participants in their learning and communication. And it's going to be interesting in this virtual world to see how this can kind of play out. And I think that for those of us who might be a little more soft-spoken or shy or hesitant to speak up in a group, I think the chat will be a really powerful tool for you to share your voice in a way that you might be comfortable. And for those of us, such as myself, who love to talk and really like to be engaged, we need to work on allowing other voices and just kind of being conscious of how much we are contributing. So please feel free also to use that rule of 2 feet. So that just means that if a session is not for you, get out of it and go to another one. Also, there's so many things happening throughout each session. We have 10 rooms going on at the same time. So you might really kind of think, oh my gosh, there's 3 that I really wanted to see. Well, maybe do a little bit of each. And also know that there will be collaborative notes for every session. So if you are not able to physically be in one of the sessions, you will be able to go back and look at the notes and the discussion. And there will be some sessions recorded as well. So that's going to be something that the room monitor at the beginning will ask if the room is giving permission to record. And if everybody in there is okay with it, we will record. If anybody's uncomfortable, we won't. So we'll kind of address that session by session. And you'll find out more about that when Jenny goes over the schedule a little bit later. So also, I think important to that idea of making sure all voices are heard is try to follow the rule, no one speaks twice before everyone speaks once. And that's something that I try to keep in mind for myself when I am in a group and trying to have a discussion, and actively listen and stand up for others being heard. And then we have our social media. We are really encouraging all of you to be active on social media. It would be really cool if NERDCamp Connecticut start trending at some point today. So we're going to use the hashtag nErDcampCT, along with if you just tag our accounts as well. So something that's been really exciting as part of our NERDCamp is we wanted to try to find a way to give back to the communities of Connecticut as a result of this organization or of this event. So NERDCamp is always free, so we don't charge admission or registration fee, but you had the opportunity to donate $15 that would then go towards the purchase of a book for a child in Connecticut. So up to date, we have raised $1,740 from the generous registrants out there, and that will equate to 116 books. We are going to leave that donation link open for the day. So if anybody did not have a chance to donate a book but is very interested, you can go to the bit.ly on the screen, or you can go to the nErDcampCT.org website, and the link to do that is right on that main page. So our plan is to coordinate with local organizations in all parts of the state to try to work on getting the books, hopefully a lot of the books by the authors that are joining us today, to get those organization books so then they can then get those books to kids for summer reading. Because NERDCamp Connecticut was really meant to be a kickoff to summer reading, and we know that if kids have books, they will read them. So thank you for all your generous donations. And I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Lucier to introduce our first Nerd Talk of the morning.
Good morning, everybody. I am super excited to introduce Drea Gohagen. She is one of my former students, and she is going to be our first Nerd Talk for today. She is one of the most amazing 10-year-olds that I know, and you can actually follow her on Twitter at go-miniactivist.com, and she is going to be sharing with us her activism story. And so I would just like to welcome Drea. Morning, Drea. I know you might be a little nervous, but we can't wait to hear your story, honey.
Okay, you ready? Do you want to say hi, or do you want me to just put on the presentation? What? Okay, so she doesn't want to talk yet. So we're just going to start the presentation. So just wave to everybody in case Grammy's watching or Bobby's watching. Okay. And now we will start the presentation. Okay. Okay. Let's switch seats.
Hi, my name is Drea Hagen and I am 10 years old. I'm from a small town in Connecticut that I love living in. I am here today to talk about my two favorite things, books and activism. I'm excited and nervous to speak for all of you today. A shout out to Miss Johnson, Miss Tom, Miss Lucia for inviting me. About me. Before I start, I want to tell you about myself. Like I said before, I'm 10 years old. I live with my mom and dad and my dog Pepper. I have no brothers and sisters, and I like it that way. Most of the time, I love being with my friends, and my favorite author is Jacqueline Woodson. When I grow up, I want to be a dance teacher, an activist. Most recently, while I was bored during quarantine, I figured out how to make a working vending machine that gives out real prizes. Let's get started with my story. What do people see when they first meet you? What do people see when they first meet you? The first part of my story of activism is about this question, but it's also about this question. What don't people see when they first meet you? For me, people see that I'm always moving, so may guess I love dancing, that I love to laugh and have fun, and sometimes I can be pretty shy. But what people don't see is this. What people don't always notice about me is that I am black and white. I am mixed, and I love it. I love being black and white, and I love my family. The most important things I want people to know about me. So now let's get started on my activism story. I definitely didn't know it then, but I'm pretty sure my story of activism began in kindergarten. This is me in kindergarten, and this is a portrait I drew of myself in kindergarten. In kindergarten, we had to draw a self-portrait of ourselves. All of my classmates were allowed to draw their portrait with a pink or peach pencil, but my teacher, who was awesome, made the mistake of telling me I had to draw my portrait with a brown pencil. I didn't want to draw myself with a brown pencil. I wanted to draw myself with a peach or pink pencil. Well, I really wanted to draw myself with a purple pencil, but I wanted to draw my color the same as everyone else. I did not want to be different. It made me feel sad to be different. I told my mom and dad how I felt different, and my mom called my teacher. She was very sorry and promised next time she would ask me what color I wanted to draw myself with. Enter my favorite librarian, Mrs. Lucia. My mom contacted her and asked if she knew any books that would help me understand that it's okay to be different. It was okay to be more than one color. That I was especially black and white. And librarians are superheroes without capes, and she had an answer. Of course she did. Miss Lucia told my mom about the book Violet by Tanya.
How to say it?
Tanya Dupree Stanek. It's a book about a little girl that had red and blue parents. She loved being Violet until she moved to a town that only had red and purple people. I won't tell you the rest of the story, but when I read the book, I remember feeling she is mixed like me. She was lots of colors and she loved it. That's why my mom and dad started calling me their mixed mama. And I started noticing that there were powerful, strong, awesome, mixed black and white people everywhere. And it also made me proud. Shout out to Miss Lucia. It's still one of my favorite books. Again, since I was the only one in kindergarten, I don't think I understood the things I know now. That books can help you feel better when you see people like you in them, and that kids can make a change. Kids only need to start talking to grown-ups that will help you do something. Like my parents and Mrs. Lucier spent the next few years making sure our school library had books that made me feel other and special. She bought books about race, black and brown kids just doing everyday things, powerful brown leaders, and it got even better. She bought books about all different types of people. Kids were deaf, kids with two moms, kids, two dads, Muslim kids, kids with anxiety, and kids with dyslexia, which is what my friend Stella has. For me, going to the library was like Christmas. I couldn't wait to see what book was going to be there next. I loved reading books that made me feel like the kids were like me. It was awesome to feel like authors thought we were special to tell stories about kids like me. It was amazing to read stories about kids that aren't like me. We all have a story we can share, and the books Mrs. Lucier bought did that. I know now when I think of it, it makes me feel like I helped Miss Lucier to do that. The top picture is my friend Drew, whose brother TJ is in a wheelchair. In the picture, my friend Stella. She is dressed up as Taylor Swift, and I'm dressed as Ariana Grande. There were books about all of us. Well, I think when I was almost in second grade, when I did my first big thing of activism, I asked my mom, and she says it was the summer of 2017. I was 17 years old.
You were 17?
No, 7. There was something scary happening in our country. There was a protest where people didn't like black people. They hated black people. It made me scared, and I didn't know why people were that way. But then my parents talked, and I decided that people hate if they don't have love in their hearts. And love in our hearts comes from being with people. And maybe those people didn't get to be with black people. And maybe if they knew black and brown people were special just like them, they would get more love in their hearts. So after knowing books made me feel better, I talked to my parents. We decided we would try to raise money for books, and we could send them to school libraries all over Connecticut. Schools with a lot of black and brown kids, and schools with mostly white kids. And maybe if they started to hear stories of other kids, they wouldn't have hate in their hearts. The stories would help them. So my parents helped me write a letter and start a GoFundMe. In 3 days, we raised over $1,000 to buy books for kids all over Connecticut. It was pretty cool to know that I could help kids know about other people. And it taught me if I talk to my parents about how I'm feeling and that I want to make a difference, they will help me find a way. And I did. This year in 4th grade, I decided to take action myself. I told my mom on Martin Luther King's birthday that I was tired of only learning about black leaders on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday at school. My mom told me to do something about it then. So what I decided to write a letter to my principal telling him that our schools had to design better Black History Month celebration. I told him in my letter that I know Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks and Ruby Bridges are Black American heroes, but there are other Black Americans that me and my classmates should learn about. There are lots of Black and brown heroes, just like there are a lot of heroes that are white, Asian, gay, Muslim, women, or people with special abilities, and that we should be learning about them all, not just during Black History Month. I asked my principal if I could design Black History Month celebration, and he let me. So at the end of January, I stood in front of my school and told them that each class would research an important Black American that made the United States a better place. And every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays during the month of February, we learn about great Americans. Of course, I gave him great Black Americans. Of course, I gave him my suggestions on who we should research. We learned about many Black Americans: Mae Jemison, Misty Copeland, Michelle Obama. My classmates learned about Claudette Colvin, who refused to give up her seat on the bus before Rosa Parks, and Patricia Bath, who helped improve everyone's eyesight. My friends knew there are lots of Black leaders because there's lots of Black leaders if you only teach a few. Some kids might think there are not many Black leaders who helped make America great. My last story of activism happened this past month. I recently watched America's Got Talent, where I learned about Archie Williams, who was wrongly sent to prison for 37 years because he was Black. It made me sad that he lost so much of his life because of racism. So I wrote a letter to Michelle Obama how I could make change. The next day, I learned about George Floyd, and I was scared. I was scared for my dad and my family, so I went to work. I organized a kid protest called Chalk the Walk. I learned about We the People. In the past 2 weeks, over 30 people have come to my house and to write messages or protest in honor of the lives of Black Americans killed because of racial injustice. So many people came over, including my friends Ellery, Stella, and my superintendent. This week, I talked to an 8th grade class in a town on how to be an activist. And in a few weeks, my meeting with the superintendent to make more change in my school. I am making change. I am an activist. My activism story.
Thanks, Drea. That was, I don't, you have to take a look at the chat, Drea and Mom, because the chat, and I'm not sure how to do that for you guys, but the chat is amazing. Drea, you are amazing. I think millions of people are giving you like the biggest rounds of applause ever. Hi, Dad. We are so incredibly proud of you, and it's just, you're blowing us away. So thank you a million times for waking up early and doing this with us, my friend.
What do you say?
Thank you.
Keep rocking it. And I'm going to turn this back over to Melissa, I think.
Say bye.
All right. So thank you, Drea. Oh my gosh. Yes, the chat was blowing up. My favorite quote was, "Librarians are superheroes without capes." So that is awesome. And I did put it that I think Barbara Johnson probably has a cape. So I would love for her to throw that on sometime today if it's at home. Thank you again. That was amazing. And we have an equally amazing follow-up to that. So Ismay Williams is going to be joining us for our second Nerd Talk of the morning. Ismay is a pediatric cardiologist. and a Latinx young adult author. Her latest book, This Train is Being Held, is now, you'll have to say, I don't remember if it's officially published. I have an advanced copy of this. I was very fortunate to get this before it came out, so I don't remember the publication date, but definitely add that to your list of books to be read over the summer. And she's going to talk a little bit about identity and diversity. So let me stop sharing my screen and we'll get Ismay on live here.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you to all of the organizers for, first of all, pulling this amazing event together in these very challenging times. I've been on with you guys since 8:15, completely impressed by all of the backstage action that you guys are doing. It's a lot of work, but everybody, I'm sure, appreciates it. So thank you so much. And also thank you for thinking of me and asking me to be a part of this wonderful event. It's going to be really hard to follow Drea, who is such a fabulous speaker in addition to all the fabulous things she did, but I'm actually pretty excited because a lot of what I'm going to talk about dovetails really nicely with what Drea so eloquently spoke about. So I'm going to just try and share my screen and tell you guys a little bit about myself. So I am a pediatric cardiologist. I am a lover of children. These are some images which we did have permission from the parents to share from when I went on a medical mission in Mexico to help children who are born with very severe heart defects who otherwise have no recourse to surgery. And that was a wonderful event. I also am a lover of animals. These are pictures to wake you up in the morning and to remember what it was like to travel. When my mother turned 70, I brought her and my oldest daughter, who was 14 at the time, to Spain to go on like a horseback riding trek. And it was so fantastic. And we also have a whole slew, a whole menagerie.
We don't see your screen.
Oh, you don't? Okay. It says StreamYard is sharing a window. Let's try again. Sorry. Let's try one more time. Application window. Can you see now? It doesn't matter. I can just go on with my talk without any of the photos if it doesn't work. I was just giving you some cute animal photos basically and little adorable children photos to wake you up. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about identity and diversity. And as a pediatrician, I learned a lot about child development. And so it was really interesting to also, and I became a pediatric cardiologist. I love children. So in medical school, I was automatically gravitating towards children. And then when I decided to become a writer, it was sort of a no-brainer. I was going to also be writing for children. And so for people who have ever taken a psychology class, you've heard of Erik Erikson, who's a famous developmental psychologist who came up with these developmental stages defined by conflicts that you need to go through in order to advance to the next stage of your life and to develop into a socially competent person. And so the stage that you tackle when you are a teen is something called identity versus role confusion. So what does this mean? This is when you start to ask yourself, who am I as separate from my family? And what type of person am I and what type of person am I going to be? And since Erikson believed that our social interactions formed a very large role in our development, it's very obvious that who you become as a person and how you determine your own identity is really dictated by these interactions with those around you. So sort of expectations, like how do your parents see you? How do your friends see you? How do other people in society see you? So, but what happens if you don't feel that you meet the expectations of those around you? What happens if you don't fit in a predicted box? When the list provided on an application or an intake sheet at the doctor's office doesn't have a category that describes you, how does that make you feel, especially if you're a young person? So I remember the first time I was faced with this question. I was applying to college. My abuelita was peering over my shoulder at the paper that was strung into my typewriter. Yes, I am that old. She was squinting to make out the words next to each of the boxes. And I was squinting because none of the words seemed right to me. So I grew up in the woods of Connecticut. My parents moved to the town because it was supposed to have the best school system. They left their families behind in New Jersey, which I think was purposeful. My Cuban mother never felt welcomed by my father's white Protestant family. A year later, my mother's parents, my abuelos, followed us. And since my parents worked very long hours and they still worked in New Jersey, even though we lived in Connecticut, my abuelos moved in and helped raise my brother and I. So back then, it wasn't really fashionable to speak to a child in more than one language. A famous pediatrician wrote in a book incorrectly that it would confuse children. But so my abuelos never spoke Spanish to us, but they did speak it amongst themselves. And I just remember thinking when I was in school, I didn't know anybody else whose grandparents spoke another language. Everybody in their house all spoke English. And but my abuelos were happy to practice English with their nietos. At least that's what they told us. But that what they would do is that they would teach us nursery rhymes in Spanish, and they would promise us. They would use sticks of big red gum, trying to get us to pronounce things properly, like the rolling of the R's, the R con R cigarro, and then we'd get some gum if we did it right. And I remember my abuelita would make picadillo and croquetas, black beans and rice, and flan, guava paste with cream cheese. And my abuela would tell us stories about the caballito with 7 colors and pulgarcito, who's Tom Thumb. And when we were older, they told us about how when they were back in Cuba, or my grandmother did, my abuela was called gallega, which because she was blonde. But that was not meant to be a compliment. That was actually a slur because her parents were immigrants from Spain. And after she got married and moved to Havana, she started dyeing her hair brown because she wanted to fit in with all the other ladies. And she hoped that she wasn't going to be called a gallega anymore. And as a middle-aged woman, she fled to a country where she didn't speak the language. And she actually taught herself how to speak English by watching soap operas. So after many seasons of watching The Young and the Restless and All My Children, which she continued to watch up until she passed away, she learned English, but she was still treated very differently because her accent was so thick. And it was so thick that good friends of mine, it would take them about half of the school year to learn to understand her when they came over to our house. But everybody loved her. She was such a warm person. But all my friends in school were white, and there were hardly any people of color in our town. And it wouldn't be until college when I would meet other people whose grandparents spoke Spanish. So thinking back to that very first application where I was faced with that choice of like checking a box, I remember my abuela's advice, and it was sort of predictable. She said, "Ay, pero just cross all these out and write in Cuban." And I thought, but I'm not Cuban either. I'm American. I had another set of grandparents, Pop, and Grandma, with whom we'd eat leg of lamb with mint jelly at Easter and at Christmas. They were back in New Jersey. But abuela just tapped her heels and shook her dark curls, reminding me that though she kept adapting, she didn't fit in a box either. She colored her hair and called herself Cuban, ignoring the names that our neighbors called her, just as she smiled and laughed and repeated, "Hello, how are you?" to everyone who didn't understand her the first few times she said it. Having an abuela like that made me feel like it was okay that I didn't fit in a single box. But not every kid is as lucky as I was to have a very strong figure, a very strong abuela to look up to. When I was younger, I sometimes thought myself capable of jumping from one box to the other, depending on who was around me. But often I felt like I didn't belong in any of the boxes, that I was never white enough or Latina enough for either sides of my family. But and over the years, I've had strangers put me in a box based on their own expectations, based on what I look like. There was a boy in Mexico when I was a teenager going on vacation with my family who, tried to get me to go dancing with him. But then bragged to his friends what he really intended to do, not realizing that I could actually understand their conversation. And then there were always lots of patients in the hospital who, when I would walk in the room, their first assumption was that I'm the nurse, not the doctor. So my latest book, which came out in February, This Train is Being Held, is a young adult novel. It's a New York City subway romance, a modern day retelling of West Side Story, a good companion read for Romeo and Juliet, but both lovers are Latinx. So this is a story about two young people who also don't fit into a neat little box. And the story is about expectations and these two characters facing the expectations that surround them, expectations from their family, from their friends, from within themselves, as well as from strangers and society around them. So Alex is Dominican American from Washington Heights. He is a baseball prodigy. His papi wants him to go pro, but Alex maybe wants to be a poet. Not that he could ever tell papi about this, because papi wouldn't even allow it. And Isa is an Upper East Side private school girl who wants nothing more than to become a professional dancer. But her Cuban-born mother thinks that's an unacceptable career choice for a modern woman, especially because her mother struggled so much to get to where she is today. Oh, and also her mother doesn't want her dating Latinos. So in writing this novel, I wanted to dig deeper into Latinx identity and the wide spectrum that this encompasses. And I wanted to explore expectations and how these expectations shape behavior and your own thoughts of who you are, especially when all the available boxes don't define you. So at this point, I was going to talk a little bit about diversity, and I was going to try and share, oh, maybe, does this work now? It says I'm sharing, but I can't see my slides, but it's okay. I can talk about them. There's going to be some excellent panels on diversity coming up. I will just give you a little preview. So the great literary scholar, Dr. Rudine Sims Bishops, talks about, we've heard about this, that books are sometimes windows offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through them in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created and recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. And therefore, the literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as part of the larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books, just as Drea so eloquently said. It's important for young people, for developing minds, to not only see themselves in books, but also to read about people who are different from them. So research shows that if you learn about diversity, you can learn empathy and you can reduce stereotypes, just as Drea, even as a kindergartner, understood that to be the case. If you read a book, if you get to know somebody who's different from you, then you can understand them on an individual level and make a human connection and dispel the stereotypes. It's important to expose children, to expose young minds to lots of different people, but sometimes that's not always possible. And when that's not possible, a book is an excellent way to do that. Books also can introduce conversations about race between parents and children. And as we stated before, fiction can increase empathy and affects how we relate to others. Then I wanted to also point out, though, that diversity doesn't only relate to race. That's something that's in the forefront of our minds right now as we all stand up against racial injustice in current events, which is incredibly important. But when you're thinking about creating a library for your students, you also have to consider you want to have characters that show diversity of race as well as ethnicity, which refers to cultural factors such as nationality and ancestry and language. You want to have diversity in sex, gender, and sexual orientation. Also ability level. That's not just physical, but also mental, psychological, and neurodiverse. There's a need for religious diversity, class diversity, and also age. I also wanted to alert you guys to the workings that came out from Peggy McIntosh, who I discovered when I gave a diversity lecture back for SCBWI back in 2018. But her work actually dates to the late 1980s. And this woman is a PhD, and she was really interesting. She was looking, her focus was women's studies, and she was trying to show her academic colleagues, who were mostly white men, that she was at a disadvantage as a woman and they weren't seeing it. And so then she started to delve into race, and she made all of her analogies about race, and then people started to grasp what she was trying to teach. And so I'll just read you this quote. So her paper is called White Privilege: Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And if you haven't read it, you should take a look at it. So this quote is, "In my class and place, I did not see myself as a racist because I was taught to recognize racism only in individual acts of meanness by members of my group, never in invisible systems conferring unsought racial dominance on my group from birth." And then another amazing person to listen to, if you can find the TED Talk by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who's a fantastic author. She wrote Americana. She talks about this, the danger of a single story, and how as a child, she always wanted to be a writer, but she was only ever exposed to books that came from England. And so all of her stories, all of her original stories, were about young children in England doing things that she didn't even know what they were, like eating apples and types of soda that she had never experienced. And it wasn't until she got older that she realized that there's actually so much value in different stories. And so she famously said, "The problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story." And I was going to say a little bit about diversity in children's books, literature, which we all know is an issue. I'm very heartened by the changes that are happening, but from data that was collected from 1994 to 2017, which is the most recent data that I've seen, which was published in 2018 from Lee and Low, 37% of the US population defined as a person of color, but only 13% of children's books featured characters that were multicultural in content. And then in 2017, so that's one issue. It's what are our books reflecting our population, and are they reflecting the beautiful diversity and breadth of our population? The other issue is, are we getting out from under that single story? Are we welcoming lots of different stories? You know, there's not just one Latinx story, there's not just one Black story or one Asian story. That's everybody is a human, and there's so many stories to tell. And so it's important to give other people voices. In 2017, Black, Latinx, and Native authors wrote only 7% of the kidlit books that were published that year. Again, these numbers have changed, which is wonderful, but it's something to keep in mind. And then data from the Cooperative Children's Book Center reported that only about 29% of books that were about African or African American people were actually written by Black authors and illustrators. 34% of books about Latinx characters were written by Latinx illustrators or authors. And then I also wanted to point out that bad representation, just in general, has a direct negative effect on the groups being represented. So as educators of children and as authors and illustrators for children, I think that we're held to a higher expectation. Our responsibility is greater than if we were just providing books for adults, because these are young developing minds. And it is just as, you know, we in medicine say, doctors say with the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. You don't want to perpetuate a negative stereotype. So it's also really important to take a look at the books that you have and make sure that they're current and not going to bring up some negative feelings in a young child. Okay, so now going back to that box on the college application, my first experience with that, I actually don't even remember what box I checked. I think I might have kind of fudged the rules a little and checked multiple boxes, which I think at the time was not allowed. But I have to say that as an adult and as a writer, I have become comfortable accepting that identity doesn't have to be a dichotomous yes or no. It can be a continuum, and it can change based on the company that you're keeping. As educators and writers of books for children and young adults, we have a responsibility to address the needs of all developing minds, whether they fit into a box or not. Embracing diversity, encouraging discussion, exploration, and empathy, while safeguarding against negative stereotypes, is one way to do this and to support our young readers in the developments of their own identity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very, very much for your talk. And again, just like Drea, Isme, you got lots of amazing comments that were coming through. So many things that we can talk about throughout the day. We are going to be wrapping up very soon so people can get to their first session. And we are going to talk a little bit about the tech help. If you are kind of confused throughout the day, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara to give us a quick overview of what you can do.
Good morning, and thank you, Isme and Drea and Melissa and the team for such amazing hard work over the last, this has been a dream for about 18 months, right? 18 months. And here is the day. We are so excited as an organization to be collaborating with other amazing literacy organizations around the state. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do want to give you some resources to provide some smooth transitions today. So you do have the session board, and Jenny's going to explain the session board a little bit more, but I want to let you know that I am constantly monitoring. So if I come over this way, I'm monitoring another computer that is answering to the email of techhelp@ctcastle.org. So if you're having trouble getting into rooms, please be patient. We do have room monitors that are clicking admit. I did try and add these to your calendar. So if you're logged into Chrome and you see calendar invites today, if you accept all 10 of those rooms, it should make transition into those rooms a little easier. If you say waiting for someone to admit you, just be patient and try again. We ask that the panel discussion rooms, the panels, you wait until about 5 minutes before that panel. And for the 10 o'clock session, we're gonna ask you to wait until maybe just 10 o'clock to start entering those rooms so that we can allow the panelists to come in and get settled. When you're in a panel room, not the other discussion rooms, but when you're in a panel room, if you could please mute your microphone and camera during those panels. There may be time at the end for Q&A, and then we would ask you to unmute your camera and your microphone. This will allow the authors to be talking to each other and see each other in their cameras, in their view. If you want to change your view, your room monitor can help you change to a tiled view, or if you're brave, I did send it out for grid view, and this will allow you to see all the participants in a meeting. Room monitors, if you feel comfortable, they can help you install grid view, or you can go to bit.ly/nErDcampGridView. That's the shortcut for the Google Chrome extension. We are running a backup live stream. This is a last ditch effort that if you can't get into a room or your browser is just really being crazy, please remember to use Google Chrome. You can log into Google Chrome using a generic user I established just for today. It's livestream@ctcastle.org. That is a Google Chrome user. The password is nErDcamp2020 with no caps. Then we have the links for the live stream right in our schedule. If you are outside the domain of Castle, some of your domains have not enabled live stream yet, and so you're going to see an error message that you don't have permission to view this. If you log into this live stream user, you will be able to see that. Remember, we're just using that as a backup. We want you in those Google Meet links. And the last thing, the banner is kind of hiding it, but we have, oh, there it goes. Thanks, Dave. We have collaborative note sheets, and those links are at the top of the schedule. We want you to use those to record your questions, especially during panels. The idea is that if we don't get to one of your questions, that an author could go back in and answer your question directly, knowing which room they were in that day. Monitors and moderators also know to look there at the end of sessions for specific questions. Our fear is there are going to be so many people that if you start entering questions into the chat, which we want you to use as a back channel, we can lose track of them. So please help everyone who's hashtag not at nErDcampCT. It already started on Twitter. Make sure they can keep up with us as well. And don't worry, just email me. What's your problem? What's your name? Maybe your cell phone number, and I'll be monitoring to try and help you. Enjoy your day. Let me know if you have any troubles. And thank you to everyone who's here today.
Excellent. And one quick thing I want to add before Jenny talks a very brief amount about our schedule. We do have a back channel using Padlet. So I don't know, Mr. St. Germain or Dave. There we go. Thank you. I'm used to live from the library where I have to be very professional and organized in front of the students. So that is the bit.ly. If you want to go back there and use that also to communicate, there's a column for shout outs. If you're really just happy with something you saw or something somebody said, there's a column for questions. And Phil, you can create your own columns. It's editable. And there's some just main things that you might need as a participant. So definitely put that in one of your tabs and just have that available for when you need it. So on to Jenny with the schedule. I don't really have, she can share her screen and I'll stop sharing so that she can pull it up and give you a tour.
I'm trying. Here we go. Okay.
All right.
Can you see this? Can you see it now? Hopefully. Is it going? Yes, yes, no, maybe. I'm hoping you can see this. Maybe someone can text me and let me know.
Yes, just need full screen.
Oh.
Just full screen it and you'll be good.
Yep. Let's see if I can do that. How do I do that? I'm not sure how to do that. Let's see. Oh, never mind. There we go. Is that better? Okay. So very quickly with our schedule. So we know that our opening session is almost over. The notes sheet, as Barb mentioned, are up at the top. The notes will go all day. So every single session is in that one note-taking sheet. The meeting links for each room are right underneath that. Again, that's where you will go for any session for that whole day. Everything is right in that one spot. The live stream links are below there too. We have, as you can see in the schedule for our 4 different time periods, we've labeled them discussions or panels for people, just so people can kind of get a sense of that. You can join any and all of those. Remember, you can use that rule of 2 feet. If there are multiple ones you want to go see, you can hop from one to one. The ones in red are the ones that are definitely being recorded. Again, we were going to, for the discussions, we will be asking if it is okay to record those discussions based on the people that are in those sessions. We do get lunch to take a time out and just kind of think about all of the things that we've learned in the morning, and then we're back at 1 o'clock. There are a couple of spots that don't have anything going on, and if you would like to use those to just continue a conversation, that would be awesome. And going down to the bottom, at 3 o'clock, from 3 to 3:30, we are going to be doing some title talks for each grade level. We will keep track of the titles shared, and so we're super excited about that. And then with our wrap up from 3:30 to 3:45, again, those are streaming on YouTube and the Facebook page. Last 2 things, down on the bottom, we have the learning lounges. So again, if you would like to have some conversations and you've met somebody in a panel or in a session and you would like to chat with them more, we have different rooms available down on the bottom of our schedule, and way down on the bottom is a link to that Padlet back channel again. So please remember to add things to the note-taking sheets. We'll put the questions up at the top so that either we can get to them at the end of panels, or the authors can hopefully come back in and answer them. And I think that's it in a nutshell.
I think so. So, woo, that was a whirlwind. People are starting to get into their sessions. So everybody who is registered, you should click on the link at the top to go into that room if you're not already there. And we need to get off this chat because we're going into some other rooms to be a monitor. So thank you so much for joining in. You can share this live stream link with everybody, post it on social media. And we hope that you all have a fabulous day, and we will see you at the end live again for our closing at 3 o'clock. So thanks, everybody. Bye.